There's an article in a veterinary industry magazine published by AHA, the American Animal Hospital Association. The article is titled Vaccine Hesitancy and the Importance of Client Communication. So AHA is the big organization that most big animal hospitals, vet clinics, especially the corporate and multi-doctor practices, are a member of, and it sets policies and recommendations, and it's like the best of the best. Anyway, the opening summary of this article says that veterinarians communicate with their clients, quote, in a way that truly acknowledges their concerns, offers individualized solutions to their pet's care, and keeps the pet's well-being as the overall goal, that it will go a long way towards shifting attitudes one case at a time, end quote. So the article cites a 2023 study that found that pet owners are more hesitant to give rabies vaccines, and that people's fear and distrust of COVID vaccines and policies is having a, quote, spillover effect on our pets. Well, yeah, it is, and that's great. The authors of that 2023 rabies vaccine article go on to say, quote, the way we feel about vaccines seems to be a very, very personal issue for a lot of people, end quote. Well, yeah, you think? Well, this more recent article about client communication says people may be vaccine hesitant for their pets because they think their pet is low risk, they're concerned about the number of vaccines given at one time, which of course everybody's worried about the number of vaccines they give at one time. They say people also worry about the risk of a reaction like pain or the cost of the vaccines. Well, I think this kind of points out that the general public and the veterinary community still perceive vaccine risks to only be like an immediate reaction or pain or cost or something. And that the vaccine industry and most people out there like you guys still don't really see vaccines as a long-term chronic health problem. And maybe that's intentional, because if more people understood the potential for long-term, irreversible immune system damage, then I don't think we'd be talking about vaccine hesitancy, we'd be talking about vaccine refusal. Anyway, there's a lot we could talk about with regard to vaccines, but I want to discuss the way this article approaches client communication. The article tells veterinarians that at the core, people's vaccine hesitancy for their pets stems from caring about their pets. Yeah, that's true. But let's try to use that against them, I think, is if you read between the lines, here's how we're going to use that against them. So the article coaches veterinarians to, quote, be open to discussing client concerns while remaining neutral, and to share the nationally recognized industry standard vaccine recommendations and guides, and to discuss core vaccines versus non-core vaccines to make it sound like you have a little bit of a choice. You've probably heard those words at your vet. Core vaccines are the ones that the industry thinks every pet should have no matter what. Non-core vaccines are optional, and they're usually recommended based on the region or the lifestyle of your pet, but they still push them pretty hard. This coaching article says that people will respond better. In this sense means you're more likely to give in to having your pet injected with chemicals if the information from the veterinarian is approached in a, quote, truly educational way. Well, it's not education, it's marketing and advertising, and it's for-profit propaganda. It's not education. Or maybe that's what education is in this country. The article tells us veterinarians that we should tell the client, quote, we're just here to provide information. It's the client's job to make the decisions, end quote. So tell me, is that how it feels when you're in the vet clinic and the veterinarian's discussing vaccines for your pet in the exam room? Does it feel like they're just providing information and like they're leaving the decision all up to you? I don't think so. The article suggests that we tell our clients something along the lines of, quote, it's not about who wins the argument, it's not a debate, and we just want what's best for your pet. Okay, well, and then they suggest we toss in some information about how much disease we see in rescue groups. Not only is that a fear tactic, but it's completely out of context. I write in my book, Why Our Pets Are Unhealthy, that stray and abandoned and neglected and other animals coming into the shelter and rescue organizations, they're usually sick and diseased with very different diseases than your typical neighborhood household pet. So those animals in the rescue groups might have parvo and distemper and fleas and things like that. And those are diseases that come from poor husbandry and neglect and poor nutrition and sanitation and living on the streets and being neglected. We just don't see those diseases in the typical neighborhood animals. And it's not because they're vaccinated, it's because of what they're exposed to, what their immune system is exposed to, and their health and nutrition and sanitation. And those are things that cause disease. So here's the summary from the beginning of the article again. So does it sound like your concerns in the exam room are truly being acknowledged? Or does any of this sound like an individualized solution for your pet? Does it sound like the industry genuinely wants to help, quote, shift your attitude with the overall goal being your pet's well-being? Or does this sound more like some tactical, manipulative, coercive approach to pushing vaccines and pressuring into vaccines while they have a smile on their face? The article concludes by telling veterinarians to, quote, prepare for an uptick in vaccine hesitancy. And it says to do this primarily by making sure that the clinic has specific policies in place and that everyone, including the receptionist, knows what the policy is when a client calls and asks about vaccines. And they recommend the national veterinary associations like the AVMA, the American Veterinary Medical Association, which is the big governing body and the one that represents veterinarians with Congress and laws and states and, you know, the big thing, that they should take the lead and create a national policy. They also say, quote, this is a big stakeholder discussion and, quote, an opportunity for veterinarians to use their status, because veterinarians are one of the most trusted professions in the United States. Use our status? An opportunity for us to use our status? Is that not the definition of coercion? And are you and your vaccine-injected pet not also big stakeholders in this discussion? And finally, my favorite part about the article suggests, quote, that veterinary professionals will need to be more open to considering vaccine research that is funded by the vaccine manufacturers. It's right here on the page, this article. We should be nicer in our approach to pushing vaccines, but still use propaganda to maybe more gently coerce pet owners into injecting vaccines. And we should try to pretend that we're leaving the decision up to the pet owner, while making sure that we have individual and national policies to refuse service to those who choose not to inject chemicals into their pets. And finally, we should trust the for-profit corporations and rely on their own in-house manipulated research or propaganda to sell more of their product. I'm just flabbergasted that the article actually put in writing that we should trust the vaccine makers' research, that statement's at the end of the article. I'm just speechless that they put that in there. Anyway, topics like this and a lot of other things are in my book, Why Our Pets Are Unhealthy, which is on sale on Amazon now. Thanks.